Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Scott Giacomucci. I'm a trauma therapist and educator. And in this video, I wanted to talk about 4 common themes that tend to show up again and again and again and again in trauma recovery and trauma therapy. And these 4 themes are organized and articulated through EMDR basic training. So this is not my idea. It's something I'm simply articulating from my training. 4 common themes are responsibility or defectiveness as the first one, safety and vulnerability as the second theme, control and choice as the third theme, and connection and belonging as the fourth theme. So these are 4 different themes that just emerge again and again and again in trauma recovery and in experiences of trauma and post-traumatic stress. I'm going to go through them one at a time here. First one that was named is about responsibility and defectiveness. And so this is that self-worth piece that I talk about in other videos. This is the self-blame, feeling like a failure, feeling worthless, feeling like there's something wrong with me. In many ways, this would be shame, essentially. And a lot of this, especially for childhood trauma, there tends to be this kind of common experience of when we experience childhood trauma, it feels so overwhelming and confusing that there isn't any other way to make sense of the experience except to believe that we deserved it or we did something to cause it. And so this distorted sense of responsibility is something that many trauma survivors will live with throughout their life, and believing that there's something wrong with them, that we're worthless or a failure, or we're defective, we're not good enough, kind of accompanies that. So a lot of the work in trauma recovery has to involve renegotiating some of these beliefs around responsibility and defectiveness, coming to believe that we are worthy and deserving of respect and care, and that when we experience trauma, most of the time, it's not our fault. Actually, it's quite rare that trauma is somebody's fault, at least the victim's fault. Most of the time when we experience trauma, the responsibility for preventing it or causing it is usually in somebody else's hands, or the hands of a system, or it was a natural disaster or an earthquake or just an accident without anyone to specifically blame. The second theme here is about safety and vulnerability. So this theme emerges often in the hyperarousal and the hypervigilance and feeling unsafe in the here and now, that some of those past feelings and emotions from the past trauma can emerge in the present. Maybe we're looking over our shoulder, or we feel like we can't trust anyone anymore. Or anytime there's a loud noise, our body jumps. This sense of insecurity or vulnerability that we're going to be hurt again. So this is pretty typical with post-traumatic stress disorder, in that it feels like what happened in the past is going to happen again, or is happening again right here and right now. So part of the recovery process has to involve really connecting with a sense of safety, making our lives as safe as possible, and developing coping skills to work through when those past feelings and beliefs can pop up and throw us off balance, while also cultivating safe relationships where we can practice vulnerability in healthy and meaningful ways. Practice vulnerability instead of always feeling vulnerable. So the more that we work on ourselves and work on our triggers and create a social support system for ourselves and develop coping skills that work for us, the less vulnerable we're going to feel out in the world, because we know we can handle things that are thrown our way. So along those lines, the third phase, or the third theme that seems to emerge often, is about control and about choices. And this kind of connects with the previous one about safety and the first one about responsibility and effectiveness. But this is specific to control and choice. And I think this has a lot to do with empowerment. We talk about empowerment, voice, and choice as the 5th trauma-informed principle. This theme emerges often in like it's trying to sort out what is or isn't within our control today and what was or wasn't within our control in the past. What we would call our internal or external locus of control. So kind of reshaping our understanding of control and the choices that are available to us today. Many times when we experience trauma, we can feel really helpless and hopeless. Our choices get taken from us in the moment of trauma. And so the aftermath of trauma, we often feel similarly. We can feel like we don't have any other choices. And part of the recovery process has to involve taking ownership of what is within our control and starting to identify new choices that we didn't see were possible in the past. And the fourth theme that seems to emerge often in trauma recovery and trauma therapy is about connection and belonging. That so much of trauma has to do with relationships and relational trauma, which can really leave us feeling disconnected and isolated and rejected and feeling like we don't belong. This is particularly true for any kind of identity-based trauma related to gender or sexuality or religion or race. And so in recovery from trauma and in trauma therapy, connection with a therapist, connection with somebody for peer support, connection and cohesion in a group, feeling a sense of belonging in a community or fellowship are especially important in that these corrective relational experiences can really renegotiate the sense of mistrust or betrayal or disconnection or isolation that we might be left feeling with in the aftermath of trauma or in the midst of post-traumatic stress. So these are four themes that seem to emerge again and again in trauma recovery and trauma therapy. And again, these themes are responsibility and defectiveness, safety and vulnerability, control and choice, and connection and belonging. So which of these themes do you feel like emerge the most in your own recovery process? Or if you're a professional watching this video, which of these themes do you feel like shows up the most for the clients you're working with? I'll be really curious to hear from you in the comments. And if you wanted to be notified about future videos released on the channel, I'd encourage you to subscribe. And I hope that you find this helpful.